Welcome to the third lesson of the Google Sheets Essential Training. In this lesson, you will see that sometimes, when copying a formula from one cell to another, the result is not the expected one. In many of cases, this is due to the faulty cell reference. We will learn about the relative, absolute, and mixed cell reference types and when to use each of them. Let's start. A cell reference refers to a cell or a range of cells on a worksheet and can be used in a formula so that Google Sheets can find the values or data that you want that formula to calculate. In one or several formulas, you can use a cell reference to refer to data from one or more contiguous cells on the worksheet, data contained in different areas of a worksheet, data on other worksheets in the same workbook. Now, there are three kinds of cell references that you can use in Google Sheets: relative cell references, absolute cell references, mixed cell references. Understanding these different types of cell references will help you work with formulas and save time, especially when copy-pasting formulas. What are relative cell references in Google Sheets? Let's use the data from the previous lesson to explain the concept of relative cell references in Google Sheets. To calculate the total sales for the period January to June, we need to use the function sum and then select the cells D2 up to I2 for Charlotte. Now, instead of entering the formula for all the cells one by one, you can simply copy cell J2 and paste it into all the other cells J3 to J8. When you do it, you will notice that the cell reference automatically adjusts to refer to the corresponding row. For example, the formula in cell J3 becomes sum of D3 to I3 and the formula in J4 becomes sum of D4 to I4. These cell references that adjust themselves when the cell is copied are called relative cell references in Google Sheets. These are the most commonly used cell references. What are absolute cell references in Google Sheets? Unlike relative cell references, absolute cell references don't change when you copy the formula to other cells. For example, suppose you have the same data set as above but you want to convert the total sales from column J from dollars to euros. As the conversion rate is changing over time, you do not want to hard code today's rate in the formula but refer to a cell where you can change that exchange rate. Let's add a new line with the exchange rate and then in cell B10 we can enter the number. Let's be creative and ask Google to give us the updated exchange rate by using the Google Finance function. We start entering the equal sign, Google Finance, and between parentheses let's write down the USD Euro symbol starting with a quotation mark, USD EUR, quotation mark again, and close the parentheses. Now we have in the cell B10, the updated USD Euro exchange rate. We want this value to be part of the formula in cell K2 where we will multiply the dollar sales with the exchange rate to obtain the euro sales value. So, plus J2 multiplied by B10. And intentionally I want to leave the formula wrongly written to see what will happen when I want to drag it over the following lines. Let's drag the formula from cell K2 down to the end of the table and, of course, we will get an incorrect set of data for the euro sales figures. Let's see why by analyzing the formula in the cell K3. This is reading J3 multiplied by B11. Let's understand why. I did copy the formula from K2 to K3 so in reality I moved one line below versus the initial formula. This means that all the cell references from the initial formula moved one line below versus their initial values. J2 was replaced by J3 and B10 by B11. Now how can I block this B10 value so that no matter where I copy the formula from K2, the B10 will always stay B10? Here comes the absolute cell reference in play. Let's delete the data from column K and start fresh and correct this time. So, in K2, plus J2 multiplied by B10 but before hitting enter to confirm the formula, while still on the B10 reference in the formula, I will press once the F4 function key on the keyboard. This will add the dollar sign in front of both the letter and the number of the cell in the formula. Let's say that the dollar sign is the one that blocks the column or the row in the formulas. Note, if you use named ranges, they are seen as absolute references and they will not be affected when you copy the formula from one cell to another. When to use absolute cell references in Google Sheets? Absolute cell references are useful when you don't want the cell reference to change as you copy formulas. This could be the case when you have a fixed value that you need to use in the formula, such as tax rate, commission rate, number of months, etc. While you can also hard code this value in the formula, like using 0.85 instead of $B$10, the best practice is having it in a cell and then using the cell reference allows you to change it at a future date. For example, if your exchange rate changes over time, all you have to do is change the value in cell B10, and the file will be automatically updated. What are mixed cell references in Google Sheets? Mixed cell references are a bit more tricky than absolute and relative cell references. There can be two types of mixed cell references. The row is locked while the column changes when the formula is copied. The column is locked while the row changes when the formula is copied. Let's see how it works on our file if we were to add the three tiers of commission based on the percentage values in cell L2, M2, and N2. Now you can use the power of mixed reference to calculate all these commissions with just one formula. Enter the below formula in cell L2 and copy for all cells in the range L2 to N7. Equals $K2 multiplied by L$1. The above formula uses both kinds of mixed cell references, one where the row is locked and one where the column is locked. Let's analyze each cell reference and understand how it works. $K2, in this reference, the $sign is right before the column notation but not before the row number. This means that when you copy the formula to the cells on the right, the reference will remain the same as the column is fixed. For example, if you copy the formula from L2 to M2, this reference would not change. However, when you copy it down, the row number would change as it is not locked. We only lock the column. L$1, in this reference, the $sign is right before the row number, and the column notation has no $sign. This means that when you copy the formula down the cells, the reference will not change as the row number is locked. However, if you copy the formula to the right, the column alphabet would change as it's not locked. How to change the reference from relative to absolute or mixed? To change the reference from relative to absolute, you need to add the $sign before the column notation and the row number. For example, B10 is a relative cell reference, and it would become absolute when you make it $B, $10. If you only have a couple of references to change, you may find it easy to change these references manually. So you can go to the formula bar and edit the formula, or select the cell, press F2, and then change it. However, a faster way to do this is by using the keyboard shortcut, F4. When you select a cell reference, in the formula bar or in the cell in edit mode, and press F4, it changes the reference. Suppose you have the reference B10 in a cell. Here is what happens when you select the reference and press the F4 key. Press the F4 key once, the cell reference changes from B10 to $B, $10, becomes absolute from relative. Press the F4 key 2 times, the cell reference changes from B10 to B, $10, changes to mixed reference where the row is locked. Press the F4 key 3 times, the cell reference changes from B10 to $B10, changes to mixed reference where the column is locked. Press the F4 key 4 times, the cell reference becomes B10 again. This ends our third lesson focusing on the cell references in the Google Sheets Essential Training. Practicing this will help you get very comfortable with the cell references, a critical skill you need to build when developing complex calculations in Google Sheets. Use the files below to exercise various situations.